Welcome to the Work Well, Live Well podcast. I'm your host Leanne, and I am passionate about bringing out the best in others. Drawing on the foundations of positive psychology and well-being science, I give people the tools and strategies to help them to work well and live well. Today's guest is Kate Russell, and she is the Director of Adelaide Conflict Management, also known as the Conflict Coach. Kate has written a book called Leaders Who Lead for leaders who love their teams. And this book is a practical handbook for leaders who find themselves in leadership roles and want to apply a positive approach to their leadership. Since becoming an accredited mediator in 2006, Kate has conducted numerous workplace mediations. She is passionate about building up teams, ensuring everyone gets a voice and is noticed, and that teams find time to strengthen their interpersonal relationships. Kate has a great sense of fun and is sensitive to the needs of groups, likes to think outside the square, and most importantly is a great listener. Everybody, welcome Kate, the Conflict Coach. Kate, I would really love for you to share with the audience, how did you become the Conflict Coach?
I became the Conflict Coach over a long period of time. So I've worked in conflict pretty much my entire life, but I became really acutely aware of conflict and having to manage it back when I was managing a community legal centre back in the 80s. And I had some incidents where I had some very powerful learning, particularly with people that were struggling. A lot of the clientele were people on disability support pensions or refugees. And so often the message got lost in translation. And I recognised in particular in one instance where I was so keen to fix the problem, I didn't actually hear the real problem.
Yeah.
So the problem presented as somebody coming to me saying they wanted the oven to be cleaned when they moved into this property, this housing trust property, and I didn't make any sense to me. And so I said to him, so would you like me to organise the housing trust to clean the oven? And he said, no, I wanted the oven cleaned when I moved in. And my brain sort of went into a spin, I felt like I was in Alice in Wonderland, because you can't have something that's already been and gone. So do you want compensation? No. And so I went down sort of this legalistic, sensible approach to dealing with the problem. And the real problem is that he was a 40-something-year-old man who had epilepsy, who'd been looked after by his mother all his life, who had treated him as though he was not capable of looking after himself. And she had died. And he'd moved into a different property and he wasn't coping. And I didn't ask the right questions. So I ended up creating a conflict. He got very angry and started smashing the desk, and I triggered that. And I was only 23. I didn't mean to make that happen, but I learnt a lot from incidents, particularly that one, but other incidents where I went, what is really going on here?
Yeah. Because
I think I come across on a regular basis some really awful behaviour, but what it's telling me is they're feeling really awful themselves about whatever's going on, and the behaviour is just telling me how awful they feel about themselves. It doesn't mean they're a bad person, it just means that they're dealing with stuff. So all in all, I've worked with lots of people in lots of different conflict situations, on the edges of family law and in workplaces. And I got tired of putting band-aids on problems. I think mediation is an amazing tool. It's very practical. But the problem I often find, particularly in workplaces, is that it's used as a way of putting a band-aid on a problem rather than actually addressing the real problem.
Yeah.
Because the real problem usually comes from the leadership. And they don't mean for it to happen. But if there is a lack of clarity, or there's favouritism or perceived favouritism, or roles and responsibilities aren't clear, or they feel like they're being micromanaged, or whatever it might be, those things are impacting on the conflict. That's actually what's triggering the conflict. It's not that the people are bad or, you know, with their personalities or whatever. There's usually something else that's behind all of that. So I wanted to stop putting the Band-Aid on, and I wanted to become really proactive. So I coach leaders and teams about how to communicate better so that we don't end up needing mediators, so that they can actually have really good relationships.
Professor Jane Dutton says that there's always pain in the room, and I think, you know, in the explanation that you've just provided, I think that's you know, it provides substance to that, I guess, because there is, isn't there? Where there's always something going on around us that we only see face value. We don't know or feel what the others are feeling. So, and especially in a workplace environment, things can go awry very quickly, can't they?
They can. They can.
So, you know, with workplaces in mind, the World Health Organization recently recognised burnout as a legitimate syndrome for workplaces and stress in workplaces. How does what you teach people in workplaces help in working towards making that better for people?
I think I've been very mindful over the years of trying to work out what's triggering conflict, and stress is obviously one of the major contributors, and stress comes because of all those things I mentioned before, and it can come about because of a lack of clarity or roles and responsibilities or feeling micromanaged and the like. And stress can also come because of huge workloads and not enough resources, and it can also happen because people don't feel appreciated and valued in what they do. We can dramatically reduce stress in a workplace if we say thank you a lot. If people will genuinely appreciate and value the work that people are doing, because nobody goes to work to do a bad day's work. They go to do their best on that day, and we're all going to have bad days and good days. And if the information that's being given to us by our boss isn't clear, or we haven't had the training we should have had, or if we're being expected to put in 60 hours work in 40 hours or whatever, then chances are that we are going to see burnout, and we are going to create very stressful situations. So one of the things that I'm really keen on doing is getting leaders and their teams, one, to be really mindful about how they respond to stress. So what is triggering them to feel stressed, and how do they respond to the stress, so that they can see how that behaviour then might be impacting on their team as well. So if the boss or the leader is really, really stressed, I promise you that the rest of the team know, and they will all react to it, and they'll react in their way that makes them feel safe. And what can happen is that people can withdraw. They can become very pleasing. They might attack each other. They might lash out. They'll take unplanned leave. And this is all then just creating a cycle of greater stress. Like, the more stressed you are, the more stressed you become. And I think we all can personally identify with that when we're really, really tired. If you're very tired, particularly, you know, if you've had young children or whatever, when that lack of sleep period of your life, and you just realise how exhausted you are and how grumpy you can become when you get exhausted. Imagine that in a workplace where every day looks like that. It's exhausting, and eventually people do burn out, or they get unwell. They get physically sick.
And it's like working in a fog when you're like that, isn't it? I've worked in stressful environments where you know, a lot of what you've just described has been very present, and people don't, like you said, people don't come to work deliberately to make life uncomfortable for others, but the symptom of the circumstance is that you know, distrust happens, people become paranoid, we find ourselves perhaps seeing others working against us, and it can be very very uncomfortable. So how can we change this?
I think it starts with, I think we need to train leaders to feel more confident to be leaders. I think that so many people end up in leadership roles because they're very good at some other skill. So if you're trained to be an architect or an engineer or a plumber or a school teacher or the like, you have that training and you feel confident in that because somebody trained you what to do. But often because you're really good in those skills, congratulations, you get to be a leader as well. and no one trains you how to do the leadership part. No. And I think that leadership is really scary. I think that there is enormous responsibility to be successful.
Yeah.
You've got to meet KPIs, you've got to generate budget, you've got to meet, satisfy the board or whatever. And that fear translates into that stress and the like. So I think what we've got to do is we've got to coach leaders to feel more confident about their own skill set, because I think that the capacity to be a leader is in all of us.
Yeah.
We just need to feel assertive and feel confident. And we're not going to feel confident if we don't have somebody to check information with.
Yes. I've heard it said before that receiving praise is received in the same side of the brain as that of how you would react to a lotto win.
Right.
If I think about that in a workplace, people do really perk up, don't they? When they, a simple thank you or simple recognition of their efforts. It doesn't have to be a grand voucher or anything like that. That recognition is powerful and brings about a shift. You think about also those leaders that are managing those teams. Even they need that recognition, don't they?
They do, and I think that this is where, and I'm really glad you said that, because I think that this is absolutely true, and I think, and I hear it so often from leaders, is that they just want to feel respected. They want to be valued by their team, but often they're behaving in a manner which is not generating that level of respect, and so it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy that they're not going to be respected. And the more they say thank you and show respect to their team, the more the team is going to come back and say thank you. Yes. And we really appreciate and value what you're doing for us. So it does go both ways. Yes. That the more you give, the more you get.
Yes.
I mean, if the giver's gain philosophy is so true. Just give, and it will come back.
Yes.
But every time we try and control, punish, embarrass people around us, they feel bad, and they're going to blame you for the fact that they feel bad.
Yeah.
It's not. It just doesn't make any long-term sense to use that as a form of management.
And ultimately, people clamp up, don't they? They're less likely to be creative or think outside of the box, because they're the opportunity to take that risk to do those things lessens because they're afraid. There's a fear factor that's embedded in there as well.
How can you afford to speak up if you're going to be mocked in front of the rest of the team?
Yes.
Or you can't. And then I mean, I've seen it in organisations where people have great ideas, but they just sit on them. Well, if I'm not going to get credit for it, if I'm going to be laughed at or whatever, and so people, there's no blue skying. There's no opportunity to just sort of throw ideas on the table because it's too risky. What a waste.
Oh, yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
Because there's some very creative and, wonderful people in our workforces.
Absolutely, absolutely. And at all levels of workforces.
Yeah.
Like an assumption that because you're low on the ladder that you don't have valuable information to contribute to the well-being of the company is just crazy.
Yeah. Oh, and interesting that you say that. There was a study that I learned of, and they talked about the janitor and their perception of the work that they were doing. And they didn't see it as just cleaning floors. This janitor worked in a cancer clinic. Their role was they had to clean up, the unpleasantness side of things in his environment. But they never saw it as as bad. They saw it as a contribution to making a difference to someone's experience of what they were going through. And I would imagine that they might have had a leader who inspired them to be that way. And I think that's a lovely way to be.
Absolutely. I done some work with respect to Power Noodle, which is a stakeholder engagement tool, and they've used this software to basically get engagement from everybody. And so the example is a hospital in America that was losing funding, and they had to work out how they could keep the hospital open, and it's a different economic and political landscape, but they had to find a way to do it. And so they asked a confidential survey to everybody in the organisation, from the CEO to the cleaners, and they got the most amazing feedback that was about what people were prepared to do in order to save the hospital. But some of the best feedback, some of the most practical feedback, came from people who were considered low status in the organisation, but they valued everybody's feedback was treated equally. Just amazing.
So what would your advice be to someone who's experiencing conflict in the workplace right now and not really sure what to do about it?
Okay, so if they're feeling that they're dealing with a conflict situation, then it's important that they verbalise that to someone, and that someone has to be somebody that they feel safe with initially. So often the thing about conflict is that it is the conversations that we're not having. It's the lack of clarity about the facts and the information. And so we've probably come to some assumptions about the situation which may or may not be correct, but because we are paranoid, and we are all paranoid because we need to be, because that's how we keep ourselves safe, that this person may have created a lot of stories to coincide with behaviours that they've seen to prove the point that this person is behaving in a way that's out to get them, and they're feeling vulnerable as a result of that. So they need to take some action, and action will always reduce stress. So it's really important to take some action. So it would depend on what was going on. So if they're feeling conflict, one of the first things they could do, and it would depending on whether they felt safe or not, is to have a conversation with the person they think they have a conflict with. And to start that conversation in a really basic way, but just take the person away or have a coffee with them or whatever, and then say in whatever voice you can muster up at the time, and just say, I feel really stressed to say this, but I'm thinking that you've got a problem with me, or there's a problem here, and can we talk about it? And it takes courage to have that conversation, but if you can have that conversation with the person you think you're in conflict with, they will know immediately that this is really important to you, because you've taken the time to have this conversation. You've told them that you're feeling stressed, so they will listen to you, and you've made yourself vulnerable, and therefore you've made it safe for them to be vulnerable too. So you can then ask them if what you're thinking is correct, or you want to check the facts, because this is what I'm thinking, it might not be right, help me understand what's going on. So if you can have that conversation, that would be a really great way to deal with the conflict. Take direct action, so that you stop walking around having a story in your head that may bear no resemblance to reality. Because most people aren't out to get you, because they don't actually have the time to do that, because they're too busy worrying about something else. So that's, chances are it's probably much bigger in your head than in reality. It might not be, but most of the time it is. And if you're struggling to do that, then you might want to take somebody with you to have that conversation. That's another option. And if you're still really struggling to do that, then you've got to find somebody safe within the organisation to have a chat with and say, this is what I'm thinking, what do you think? And they might be able to give you some feedback about what else is going on. But the very best way to deal with conflict is to actually deal with conflict. Is take action.
And sometimes in my own experiences, sometimes I've thought it's been something, and it's been something totally different.
Absolutely.
I've just as you said, let my mind do the talking. And
the thing is that when we make a judgment like that, we can only make judgments based on history.
Yes.
So that judgment has come from a past experience that we've had, and we're imposing our past experience on somebody else.
Yes.
We're making an assumption that they think, behave, do the same thing as somebody else.
Yes.
And it might not be true.
No.
Chances are it's not.
Yeah.
So we're so scared of these conversations.
Yes.
And so your voice might shake and all of those things. But what will happen is that the more you take action, the more you will just be able to have conversation with it being just a conversation rather than a difficult conversation or an awkward conversation. And the other side of the coin is that you will learn and develop relationships with people in a much deeper, more meaningful way than if you keep running away from the conversations.
Yes.
Because chances are that the person that you think you're in conflict with, when you actually put that on the table, then you'll have some understanding about what they're going through and why they might be reacting or ignoring you or seeming grumpy or whatever. And so you'll then be able to have some empathy for them, and equally they'll be able to have empathy for you. And that has to enhance your relationships.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, you've written a book on leadership.
Yes.
And it's a fantastic book.
Thank you.
I've been lucky enough to read it, and I have a signed copy, so I feel extra special.
That's lovely.
How is that useful for leaders?
What my book's about is that it's based on a model that I have created from my years of working with people in high levels of conflict. And it's broken into a number of different overlapping circles, so 3 circles. The main area that we focus on initially is the discovery area, which is self. So understanding stress and how we respond to stress and how our response to stress then triggers other people, and looking at what can we do to reduce our stress and what can we do to reduce stress in our workplace. It's about clarity, and clarity is just, it's a word that's used a lot, but it is such a powerful tool. The clearer we get about everything, the easier it is to lead.
Yes.
So leaders need to have a clear vision. They need to know how they're going to get there. They have to have clear goals. They need to be able to express those goals to people so everyone understands what's going on. They need to have really clear roles and responsibilities so that you don't need to micromanage, and secondly, so people don't then go and do somebody else's job and people don't complain. You need clear processes and procedures, and you need really clear expectations.
Yes.
So when we're really clear, then the world's really quite simple because you know what to do next.
Yeah.
And road rules are a really clear example of that, is that we all know what the road rules are.
Yeah.
We can drive anywhere pretty much within our wonderful country because we know what the road rules are, and we can trust everybody on the roads even though we don't know them. We can do all of those things because we know what the rules are.
Yes.
So when you have really good clarity about what the rules are, what the processes are, when everything's in, just schmick clear, then that reduces stress on the team because everybody knows what to do next.
Yes.
It's so good.
Yeah.
So clarity is really good. And the final part of that puzzle is appreciation.
Yeah.
And how do you show appreciation? How could you improve that? How can you ensure that the team sees invisible work and all of those little bits and pieces that people do every day that help everybody else out, that often get unnoticed, but which are pivotal to the well-being of the team.
Yeah.
So we focus on that. And then once we've done that, then we look at communication and listening and respect. And then we look at also at trust and perspective and all of those wonderful things.
Yes.
So there's a number of things. So the book is really good for leaders. It's basically a step-by-step guide how to lead in a positive manner.
And I didn't share the title. Leaders Who Lead.
Leaders Who Lead. For leaders who love their teams.
And I will share a link to that.
Oh, thank you.
In the show notes. Besides your own book,
yes,
as we sort of come to the end of our lovely chat, do you have another book, a TED Talk, or a quote or some words of wisdom that you might recommend to the audience?
Oh, there's so many. It's hard to even know where to go. Look, I think if there's a book that I would recommend, it is Radical Candor.
Oh, okay.
By Kim Smith.
I haven't read that one.
Radical Candor is a way of giving feedback.
Uh-huh.
So it's care directly, it's care personally and challenge directly.
Right.
And it's basically, if I were to have food in my teeth, then I would like you to tell me that I had food in my teeth, but I don't want you to embarrass me. I don't want you not to tell me because you don't want to hurt my feelings.
Yeah.
And I don't want you not to tell me so that you look good and I look bad.
Yes.
I just want you to tell me that I've got food in my teeth.
Yeah.
So chances are you could just whisper in my ear,
yeah,
Kate, you've got food in your teeth, which I do have a lot of food in my teeth on a regular basis. But so you can, it's about caring personally, challenging directly. And it's got some fantastic language in it. One of the best terms is ruinous empathy.
Oh.
And ruinous empathy is when we don't say anything because we don't want to embarrass the person.
Oh.
And it's really cruel and unfair not to give people feedback and tell them what's going on just so that you protect that person from from pain or feeling uncomfortable. If you have an employee who's not performing, they need to know, because then they can do something about it.
Yes.
It's not fair to leave people hanging when you know an answer and you can help them. Yeah. So, and I've seen this over and over again where I've dealt with employers where they have tolerated inappropriate behaviour for years, sometimes 20, 30 years. And then all of a sudden somebody brand new comes into the organisation and challenges that behaviour and goes to the boss and says, what are you going to do about it? And then they recognise that they have literally been tolerating that behaviour because they're too scared to call it out because of the response that they might get.
Yes.
And they don't want to hurt that person's feelings. And they're also a little bit scared about this person's response.
Yeah.
But you can imagine that if you find out after 20 years that your behaviour's been a problem,
yes,
that you probably within rights to feel a bit grumpy about that.
Yes. And I think we've all been there too.
Oh, yeah. I don't,
on both sides
yeah,
of
that's
the
right.
fence.
You tell them. I don't want to tell them.
Look, thank you so much for our lovely chat today.
That's an absolute pleasure.
If people want to connect with you, I'm going to share links, etc. But if people wanted to connect with you, what's the best way to contact you?
Look, probably by email, which is kate@theconflictcoach.com.au, and I have a Facebook group called the Thrive Tribe, and that's a really good place to just share information and we can talk about bits and pieces.
Yeah.
So.
And a wonderful resource. I certainly am part of that group too, and I love it. So thanks so much.
Thank you so much for having me, Leanne.
Thank you for joining me. To find out more about Kate, visit her website, The Conflict Coach, at www.theconflictcoach.com.au. If you found this podcast to be of interest, please share it with others too, so that they can benefit from it as well. And rate this podcast on iTunes to help me get the message out there further. Thanks for joining me. Bye for now.